Our beautiful island republic of Trinidad and Tobago is known for quite a few things. One of them being carnival, another being soca music, calypso music, the steel pan, which I believe is the only acoustic instrument to be invented in the 20th century. And we are also known for beautiful women, beautiful people in general. I mean, look at me. We do have some quite exquisite specimen of people in Trinidad and Tobago, but to most Trinidadians, something that people from the outside may not know that this country is really known for is the amount of vehicles. If you want to evaluate whether someone is a Trini by name, I know there's a special class of people. For those who exist in the Twitter universe, there's a special group of people who love to have those Caribbean flags in their names, but they're doing that by proxy because probably 2 generations ago they had someone who lived here. And okay, I'm okay with people claiming their heritage as much as they want to, but there are some differences. If you want to know if someone is just claiming that by heritage and proxy, or if they really know the island, if they are a genuine Trinidadian by birth, ask them about the car problems in Trinidad and Tobago. Ask them what kind of vehicular problems do you think we have in Trinidad and Tobago. And people that live here would know that to some extent it may seem like we have too many vehicles. And it's kind of strange because in Trinidad and Tobago, vehicles are priced kind of more expensive than the global standard of prices. So we have more expensive vehicles and we have more people owning them per number of people. So if you check by even adjusted for population, if you check the number of cars in Trinidad and Tobago, it's a large number. So it seems to be like something cultural. It seemed like when Dr. Eric Williams, our first Prime Minister, changed away from the railways and attempted to get some buses into the public transport service. Personally, I think that may be one of the worst decisions Trinidad has ever made because railroads and railways require, generally speaking, it's much easier to be done when the rails were laid there hundreds of years ago before the houses came. But now the houses and infrastructure otherwise is there, and to try and put back rails is a bit difficult. But it seems like when that decision was made and the attempt to bring in the bus service was done, and then in time the bus service wasn't that reliable, and combine that with the booming economics in this young, newly independent island, it seemed like the independence of the island gave people that feeling for independence in transport. And independent, individual, private transport is something that is a cultural thing. And I think when it forms, it's not something that is very easy to break. People who are accustomed jumping in a vehicle that is parked in their yard and going to the destination that they want to go to, and then jumping in that vehicle right outside of that destination and returning home, they may not be very willing to change that into a more public, community-based transport system. It would not be as convenient, generally speaking. And if you want them to do it, you have to make it as convenient. Anyway, all of this is to say that during this pandemic, something that we are seeing getting a hard lash are the car sales. And it does tell a lot about our economics, and I think it paints an interesting picture and gives a nice window into the economic situation of the country by watching the vehicle sales in this country, knowing how it seems like individual and private citizens really do love their private vehicles here. So by getting a glimpse into that, we're getting a glimpse into the economics, and sales are dropping. Now, car sales are a unique thing because it's not exactly a necessity. But as I said, with the cultural trend in Trinidad and Tobago, it seems to be, when available, when possible, one of the quickest luxury items that Trinidadians buy. So it's a good measure. If you haven't clicked or touched or smashed or whatever you do to that like button to make sure it's selected, please do that now, and drop a comment at any time if you have something to say. I do read the comments, as few as they are on YouTube. I do read them, and maybe the few comments tell me that I'm doing a great job explaining whatever the material is I'm covering. So what we're going to do now is get into some articles where they're talking about the price change in new vehicles and the price change in used vehicles. Now, these two categories are different in Trinidad and Tobago. For obvious reasons. New vehicles tend to be more expensive. They tend to be more available to a certain class of people, while used car vehicles is an industry that was formed especially in the last 20 years or so, and it has allowed for a lot of entrepreneurship from people who would not have typically been in that large import business. It has allowed for that entrepreneurship to be distributed around non-typical business people, and it has created availability for people who would not have been otherwise able to buy cars now to afford it as used vehicles. So there's a bit of a class difference in this, and personally, if you follow enough of my content, you'd know how I see the two main parties in Trinidad divided. That the ruling party currently seems to have more of a classist lean. And let's go through these stories and see if we're seeing what I'm saying. New car sales down 27%. Industry looks to economic recovery. This is an article from October the 19th from the Daily Express. In 2020, 9,756 new cars were sold. Of that amount, 6,702 were classified as passenger vehicles for private use, while 3,054 were for commercial use. The most purchased vehicle was the Kia Sportage at 2,072 units. I could have guessed that. There are lots of Sportages on the road, and it feels like Kia makes a tweak on that vehicle every 2 months. I feel like you're always seeing some new version of those vehicles. Anyway, conversely, the least purchased was the two-door coupe, I suppose of the Kia itself, with just 8. According to the president of the Automotive Dealers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, ADATT, or ADAT, I guess, Ryan Lachu, who is also president of Toyota TNT, new car sales have been flat from January to September 2021 when compared to the equivalent 2020. We basically sold 50 units fewer this year than the same period last year, and we were locked down for 2 months this year and 2 months last year, so we will call it flat. For the rest of 2021, the outlook is similar for 2021. He observed that new car dealers face many challenges, the first of which, and this challenge is something I see repeated continuously everywhere. And for some reason, I've said it before, I am yet to find a comfortable explanation, something that seems to be intuitively true in explaining our lack of foreign exchange. The first problem is foreign exchange. Since 2015, we have been challenged with Forex, and the government's focus has been on other industries as opposed to the automobile industry, he said. Now, it's interesting, the year that he called starting some of those Forex problems was 2015, which, if you know Trinidad and Tobago politics, was an election year when we saw a changeover from the partnership to the PNM government. Now, whatever was the actual change in politics and economic policies that caused that Forex will be interesting to note. I wouldn't doubt and I wouldn't be surprised if on the government side there's something that suggests that the problem was created before 2015 and it was some form of honesty at that point that changed that allowed the problem to now be noticed. I wouldn't doubt that that will be the explanation given or attempted to be given, but I am not sure of the explanation yet. The problems for Forex was echoed by CEO of Southern Sales Imtiaz Ahmad and Massey Motors Senior Vice President Jean-Paul Ducoudray. However, Ducoudray said since Massey earns some foreign exchange from its other subsidiaries, it is not always at the mercy of the tight Forex situations of the banks. And again, one of the facts of the matter with that, when you have multinational or companies that have other branches that do other forms of business, they would have an easier opportunity to access Forex, especially if they have businesses existing outside of Trinidad and Tobago, because it could seem like the forex problems we are facing isn't necessarily Caribbean-wide, but just specific to Trinidad and Tobago. The impact of COVID-19 has been deep for the industry as it has affected assembly in Asia, as well as created a shortage of semiconductor chips needed for new vehicles. That has hampered production, and what it means is less sales, Dukudre said. Then there's freight cost. That's something I went through in one of my contemplations, and that one seemed to be at least semi-viral on Facebook. A lot of people have interest in that, and I feel like maybe I'd go through some more, at least the thread that started that contemplation, and some of the other stories and the additional stories that explain some of the freight problems and what is starting it and continuing it, and what makes some of these freight problems seem like there may not be an end soon in sight. But these freight problems would obviously affect car dealerships here, as car dealerships require freights to import their cars. But thus far, the car dealerships said that they have observed thus far freight costs have had minimal impact on the cost of cars. But he said it is still too early to tell what the final outcome would be next year. And bearing in mind, as I just said, the solution to this freight problem, to these container problems, doesn't seem like it would be very, very soon. Another problem that both the new cars and the used car industry seem to be having is with the government's push towards electric vehicles. I have quite a few problems with government policies that attempt to do good. It sounds weird, but I have some problems with that, because we get lost in deciding what is good, and we get lost in deciding how this good is going to happen. Very often with these climate change policies that we see happening, they attempt to extract changes out of end user customers and consumers who actually have very little impact on the global climate. And the largest effects on the global climate, the people that are doing some of the biggest impact there, are some of the largest industries that won't be touched. And it seems like they would attempt to make you drive in an electric scooter for a large industry over in China to be able to still belch dirty coal out to the heavens. That's what it could seem like a lot of the times when you see some of these policies. The move towards electric, at least what is seen by the new car industry. On October 4th, in his 2022 budget presentation, Finance Minister Colm Imbert said, in keeping with the government's commitment to promote a green economy and reduce the country's carbon footprint, I propose to remove all custom duties, motor vehicle tax and value-added tax on the importation of battery-powered electric vehicles, with an age limit on imported used battery-powered electric vehicles of 2 years. This measure will take effect from January 1st, 2022 and will be reviewed after 2 years. While the local automobile industry is widely receptive because of the positive impact such policy decisions will have on the world because of climate change, they remain skeptical about the public buy-in, because it would also mean a cultural shift from the country. The cultural shift is twofold: an understanding of the environmental impact of fuels and having to charge cars at stations rather than filling up pumps. Now, on the scientific side, the argument is actually out on how much better for the environment electric cars actually are, because electric cars need to be built, and the input of carbon into building an electric car is much larger than the input of carbon into building a regular vehicle. And many of these electric cars don't repair as well, so they require a lot of replacement parts, and eventually maybe the whole vehicle replacement in a shorter period of time. And in such a case, you may be buying this thing more that requires more production and more pollution into the environment, but when you use it, it feels better because you don't push as much pollution out there. But on a global scale, you may actually be doing more hurt. But it's one of those things that could allow us to feel good. And when you think about it from a policy perspective, where a government is forcing a country into this, where some of the scientific arguments may still be out, you could wonder how much of it is about science and how much of it is about partial economics benefiting who they would like to benefit. As it stands, there's already one company that brings in electric vehicles. That's Lifestyle Motors' luxury brand Porsche Taycan, which retails for over $1 million. Thus far, 6 have been sold in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's a lot where the problem is that the used car dealership is having with this policy. A lot of the electric cars under 2 years old are going to be extremely expensive luxury vehicles, and you'd be giving tax write-offs to the people that need it the least. And personally, I find that seems well in tune with some of the things that Mr. Imbert does on a regular. This is the finance minister that stood up during a budget much like the one that went recently and said again about this whole cars business, that the people in Trinidad do not need these large engine vehicles. It's bad for the environment. We need to do things to decrease people having these vehicles. And he was saying this probably like 2 weeks after he himself purchased a Mustang. And he purchased that Mustang on a tax-free status because of his parliamentary privilege, being an MP. Not the parliamentary privilege where they are allowed to say what they want, basically, but the one where they get those tax write-offs. And he bought this massive engine Mustang off of that tax write-off and then proceeded to increase the taxes on vehicles just like that for the citizens, because they can't have vehicles like that. That's not good for the country. So you see, what's good for the country isn't what's good for them, because they're special and different. As a finance minister, I do not know him personally. I have no real feelings about him personally. I do not know the man. But some of his moves as a finance minister leave much to be desired. Government wants to kill us. This is the message coming from the foreign used car dealers. This article, also from the Express, was also from the 19th of October. With the cost of freight tripling, delays on the port, and the continuous headache of access to foreign exchange at the commercial banks, foreign used car dealers in TNT are painting a bleak picture of their survival. The Express Business spoke to a few car dealers to hear the major challenges in the COVID-19 pandemic. Stefan Maraj, owner of Vishnu Maraj Motors in Enterprise, said 2021 especially has been a catastrophic year for him, as from January 1st to September 30th, he has sold 50 cars. This is the worst my business, which has been family run for 26 years, has experienced, from selling 600 cars before the government slashed the quota of imported cars, then to 300 and now 50. It's unbelievable, he said. Now, I would have understood if it was just market forces. So people don't want these used cars anymore, then it's up to people. And you can't force people to buy something from you. So, okay, that was just market force. But when a government makes a policy that sees you and your business drop to less than 10%, that's 5% of their previous sales, that starts to feel like you could be victimized. And I could understand why people would have that feeling and could have that feeling. The foreign used car industry has suffered a great deal in the last few years with the different policy changes the government has introduced. The business owner explained that with the cost of freight tripling and other cost factors increasing, some of the cost has to be transferred to the consumer. The foreign exchange issue continues to be a major issue, which Maraj says continues to cripple the car industry. And he was saying that the only way he survives, and I've heard this from a variety of other business people, that they have to use their credit cards. And it seems like the banks are purposefully herding you into using the credit cards for obvious reasons. They make a profit off of you using the credit cards. Now, understand the evil of this kind of thing in the system. I've heard from some business people where they make Forex, and if it reaches to a local bank account, the local bank steals your Forex because you didn't willingly sell them it. If they take it and give you TT dollars, you didn't sell them it. That isn't a sale, that is theft. So they steal that Forex from you, give you TT dollars, and If you would like Forex, you cannot get that back. You could get some on your credit card, where when you're paying it back, you have an interest to pay on it. I consider that evil. And if it is government policy that is allowing for these things to take place, where commercial banks, because these banks aren't making money for the entire country, these banks are making personal profit for some people who I'm sure have friends in high places. And if the case is that it's government policy that is allowing this kind of evil action from the banks to go on, then that's evil action from the government. And again, it leans into some of the things I always say about this PNM government. It may be that it seems they may steal some less than the UNC governments of the past. But while they may not literally take it, it seems like they build some channels and chutes so that all the resources generally move in certain directions. While maybe because of some of the more open and rampant corruption in the other group, they cannot allow those channels to channel all the resources. They need it to be spraying all around so they could have some. And in that way, it feels like in Trinidad, we're trapped between politically a rock and a hard place. Despite challenges to obtain US dollars, the car dealer said he will not venture into the black market as he has never done anything illegal in his life and he does not intend to start. And I've heard that also from some other business people, where many people are now leaning into black market supply of money. And it could seem like you're forcing who would have once been law-abiding citizens to, in order to continue along their business track, if they would like to, that now they must become a criminal enterprise. And if policy is changing law-abiding citizens into criminals, then I don't think the problem is in the law-abiding citizens. He also cast blame on the government for trying to strangle the foreign used car dealers by imposing restrictions on the age of the vehicles and taxes. I realize in this business, this is the foreign used car dealer speaking. I realize in this business, it is who you know in the government and other places, because the issues we are facing for US dollars, a few other dealers are not experiencing. It is very evident when you go by their businesses, you see the most expensive cars in their yards. So where are they getting the US dollars? And it is the same thing for the new car dealers. This cannot keep happening, as the middle class customers are the ones to suffer in the long run. Regularize how the US is being dispersed and stop the friend thing, Moraj said in frustration. And I agree. Can we have, please, some clarity, some transparency on what is going on with this whole Forex situation? Moraj noted that he sometimes feels like the government's aim is to shut down the industry. And I can't say that is a ludicrous feeling for him to have, because this is the same government that quite purposefully, and evidently it was purposefully, shut down the competition in the cement industry in Trinidad and Tobago. They built a puzzle piece. They cut out a jigsaw puzzle piece of policies. And what fit that puzzle piece is rock hard cement leaving the island and leaving TCL to monopolize the industry. And this government was the government that did that. So I do not think that it is outside of the realm of possibility that this government may be trying to close out other businesses in pursuit of their own objectives. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that everyone in this government has dreams of all the money landing in their friends' laps. But what you do notice is the more a government interferes in an industry, the more they put their fingers on the scale, is the more you'd see bias movements in the economy, because it's no longer the free market. Things aren't being decided just by free choice of people. No, they're being decided by government policy, and those always have biases. On Going Electric asked whether he plans to import electric cars given the tax break outlined in 2022, Murad said no, as most full electric cars are Forex guzzlers. My belief is this tax exemption on electric cars will only benefit a very small but wealthy segment of the population, whereas the tax exemption on 4-year-old hybrids served a wide segment of lower and middle income. Now, hybrids seem to me to pose just as much a lean into the green economy and into being more climate sensible and allowing people to make small baby steps into the electric industry, and they're more affordable as it's older technology. It seems strange to me that our country that was leaning into CNG technology, compressed natural gas to run vehicles, which is technology from the 80s, is now all of a sudden being so advanced that we only want 2-year-old electric vehicle technology, which is very expensive. So is it now we are going to see a fleet of Teslas and hybrid electric Porsches and electric Mercedes-Benz and BMWs for the upper class and public transport in the lower class? Because you cannot travel in those gas guzzlers anymore. It's not good for the environment. So sit in that bus and watch everybody whiz past in electric vehicles. What do you think? Tell me what you think. That's all I have for now. That's where I'd leave it at. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained, and drop me a comment. Tell me exactly how you think this is going to run. Do you think that some of the suggestions that the government seems to be pushing things in a direction, that's just conspiracy talk? Or do you see it could actually seem like that? There seems to be a logical line going in that direction. Tell me what you think. And stay tuned. Tune in for the next video where you will see me there.
And you feel the music, rising with the time.